What is going on, guys? Today I'm going to be talking about something that I really don't know how I haven't in the past. This is something that is discussed all the time and people have extremely strong opinions about. I don't really one way or the other, but I think it's definitely an interesting topic and something worth talking about. Pretty much the question I'm talking about is who is the current strongest Yonko? And I'm gonna be real, guys, while you could debate it, I just don't think it's worth it right now. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that Luffy, Big Mom, and Blackbeard are not going to be the top person. I think Shanks and Kaido is really who we're talking about. They are just by far hyped up to be the two strongest. I could see maybe an argument for Shanks being weaker than Blackbeard, but even then, I'm not buying it at this point. Don't get me wrong, I think it's very possible that Blackbeard actually will end up becoming the strongest Yonko since he's kind of being built up to be the final villain per se. But, you know, at this point, I just don't think that's the case. I think he might even, like, acquire another Devil Fruit or something or get some huge power-up since that's just what he's been doing throughout the series. And right now, I don't think he's there. I mean, if he was just to stop getting more powerful now because he was already at his peak, that'd be kind of weird since, you know, like, just how we're seeing Luffy and all the Straw Hats and all the good guys pretty much getting more and more powerful as they go through the story. We've kind of been watching Blackbeard do the same thing, and we're nowhere near the end, so he has to continue getting stronger. I do not think he's at the top right now. Big Mom, I mean, okay, no, like, that's just not the case. And Luffy is the worst of them all, and he's borderline a Yonko. Like, he's not. I mean, he kind of is, he kind of not, so while this video is titled Who is the Strongest Yonko, it really is more of a, like, Shanks versus Kaido situation, who is overall stronger. Not who would win in a 1v1, just who is overall stronger, although, for the record, I do think the answer is the same, but that's not the point. And something that I do want to get out of the way before we do get into this, since I have established that we are talking about Shanks and Kaido, is that a lot of people, I was very surprised by this when I made my channel. I started getting comments a lot of the time, but I was surprised that so often people would comment stuff like, well, of course Shanks is stronger than Kaido, he defeated him before Marineford. And the reason that this surprised me so much that people would comment this is because I at least thought that it was pretty clear that there's no way Shanks could have possibly stopped him using force for so many reasons. I mean, for one thing, how did he get there without a scratch on him? How did it not take any time? I mean, like, the battle between Akainu and Aokiji took 10 days, and Shanks versus Kaido is just, like, gonna be a few minutes. Like, that just doesn't make sense. If that was to be the case, then Shanks would be the god of the One Piece verse, and no one would even be able to get near him. Like, he would solo Prime Rayleigh, Prime Whitebeard, he'd solo Roger. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And not to mention, if it wasn't already clear then, like I happen to think it was, it should be even more so now that he is quite a mysterious man, with him just being in the chambers of authority, talking to the Gorosei like, you know, whatever, yeah, I'm just talking to the Gorosei, no big deal, I'm gonna tell you about some pirate. I mean, the guy has clearly a lot of different trump cards that he can use to make different things happen. He doesn't always have to fight. He is just crazy. I could totally see him actually having, like, a conversation with Kaido, like, oh, hey, I brought this sake from my hometown, have some, and then boom, Kaido gets drunk, he starts crying or whatever, you know, his sad drunk mode. Of course, I'm not saying that is the only viable way that Shanks could have pulled this off, but it just doesn't seem to make any sense that he would have fought Kaido for a million reasons, and I could totally see him being able to have just persuaded him to stop. He totally could have had something against Kaido, some kind of card up his sleeve, maybe some degree of blackmail. I can't really imagine anyone blackmailing Kaido, not because they couldn't beat him, because I think Shanks could potentially beat Kaido, but because, I mean, what does Kaido care? Like, what could anyone possibly have on him? Maybe Shanks knows that he's a Poneglyph, but I don't really even see how that would affect Kaido so much unless that was, like, some huge weakness. But how would that be a weakness? I don't know. So, okay, I think I've made my point there. I think it's pretty agreeable that Shanks by no means fought Kaido before Marineford. I mean, the closest thing I could see to that is maybe, like, the crews just kind of matched up against each other, and Kaido realized that maybe while he could even put up a fight or defeat Shanks, overall, with their crews in their entirety, Kaido would end up losing, so he's like, alright, I'm not going to do this. But that, in general, that just doesn't seem like to be in character for Kaido. Like, even if he just never thinks he's going to lose. I cannot see a situation where Kaido goes up against an opponent, he's like, oh, I'm going to lose this. He doesn't care. He would just go all in. I mean, we haven't seen that much from Kaido, but that is so far seems like the type of character he is for sure. I mean, just look at one of his commanders, Jack, who a lot of people believe is the weakest of his commanders. When he was going up to Dofi's warships that were protecting him while they were taking him to Impel Down, he knew that these warships, while there were multiple of them, one of them, the one that was protecting Dofi, I guess he probably didn't know it had Suru on it, but it's possible that she was there for sure. But he knew for a fact that Sengoku and Fujitora were on there. Let me just say that again. He knew that Sengoku and Fujitora were on there, and he is very possibly the weakest of Kaido's calamities. And he's just like, we're going in. And someone's like, what do you mean we're going in? He's like, who the hell do you think I am? Like, that is the type of mindset that Kaido and his calamities are in for sure all the time. So I just cannot see that happening. I would even offer the possibility that maybe Shanks had something for Kaido. He's like, alright, I'll make a deal with you here. You're not really going to gain anything by attacking Whitebeard. He's probably going to end up dying anyways. So you take this and you get out of here. That is the deal I can make with you, and then I'm going to go to Marineford myself. And Kaido was like, well, fuck. Okay. I'm sure that Shanks gave him something really useful, and we'll probably find out about it very soon. But again, yes, like I said, I think that is a very agreeable thing to think about. It just doesn't make any sense for them to have fought before Shanks went to Marineford. So let's talk about who I actually think is stronger between the two. And I'm not going to lie, this isn't going to be like a normal versus battle when I talk about who would do what, because, I mean, let's be real, we don't really know any of their abilities at all, for that matter. Like, all we know is that Shanks undisputably has extremely powerful Conqueror's Haki, and we can assume that his other Hakis are very powerful as well. And as for Kaido, we don't even know if he has Conqueror's Haki. I mean, we do. Like, obviously he has it, but it's not even confirmed yet. Like, we know nothing about the guy. The only thing we really have to go off of is the enormous amount of hype that Oda has given us for both of these characters, and very importantly, something that a lot of people like to ignore, is things that the narrator actually said. So as for the things that make Shanks seem very powerful is, for one thing, he was on Gold D. Rogers' crew, and I at least believe that he probably went to Raftel. A lot of people don't seem to think that, but I really broke down the numbers, and it seems to be the case. It seems like it makes no sense at all that he wouldn't have gone to Raftel. It's not entirely important, but I think that if someone was to go there, they probably would become stronger in at least some kind of, like, emotional way, which can manifest in combat. Not to mention, even if they didn't go to Raftel, I mean, he was on Roger's ship. Like, he's got to be pretty powerful. He had to pick up a lot of pointers from the commanders on that crew, and it seems like he was, to some degree, a disciple of Rayleigh. He may not have been, but it seems that way. He calls him Rayleigh-san, which, again, is not that important, but it's definitely a matter of respect that you don't really see in the pirate world. On top of that, as far as we've seen, he is the only character in the series that has used Conqueror's Haki that has actually physically affected his environment. Of course, we've seen Conqueror's Haki that makes people pass out, but we've never seen just inanimate objects take damage, except for the one time Shanks used his Conqueror's Haki when he was on Whitebeard's ship. Now, putting a few scratches on some pieces of wood is not really all that impressive. I mean, how would that actually be useful in combat? However, if Conqueror's Haki has more to it, especially if it's something like my theory on how Conqueror's Haki work, if you want to know what that is, just go look up my video on that, then it could be very important, because he could have some, like, either next stage of Conqueror's Haki that would give him extra abilities, or, I mean, his Conqueror's Haki is just so powerful that it actually ends up affecting his physical environment, which would mean then that people in general would be massively affected by it, more than a normal person would be. We also have never seen at any point in the story Shanks have a look of fear on his face or intimidation or anything of that sort. I mean, he just always has been, like, completely in control of every situation we've seen him in, and I think that that is very impressive. Now, as for Kaido, what we have about this guy, of course, is that he is a Yonko, which is just good in itself. That it means he can immediately compete with Shanks, and I guess it's worth mentioning, since some people think that Shanks can just completely annihilate anyone in the series, and I'm telling you that if he's facing a Yonko, there's no way he's going to destroy them. So yes, Kaido is a Yonko. On top of that, he is absolutely massive. I believe besides giants, he's the biggest character we've seen in the series. He looks taller than Whitebeard. It's really hard to say because both of them have been extremely inconsistent in the series. I mean, the first time we see Whitebeard, he looks like he's as tall as a skyscraper, and then later he's just like twice as tall as Akainu, who is huge, by the way. Akainu is like 10 feet tall. However, you know, that would only put Whitebeard at 20, where he looked like he was more like 80 the first time we'd seen him. So it's hard to say how tall these guys really are, but it seems that Kaido's probably bigger than Whitebeard, who was already absolutely massive. Now, like I've said, in the One Piece world, a lot of the time, it almost seems like being big is actually a disadvantage, unless you're just like kind of big, like Katakuri or Dofi or an Admiral or something. Then it's kind of an advantage because you're not like so big that it's like you're fighting a fly. I don't know, it's really weird. Like, being bigger should help you, but a lot of time in the One Piece world, it doesn't seem to make any difference. I mean, it seems like Luffy is physically stronger than giants that he's fighting, so who really knows? But at least from a logical standpoint, him being that big should be helpful. He, at this point in the story, seems to be, to some degree, incapable of taking damage. I don't really know how to gauge that, but it appears that when he is captured and completely incapacitated, that they're just unable to kill him for whatever reason. So as far as we know, he might just not be able to take damage. I think the two big things that could mean is either his armament haki is so powerful that no one's ever been able to damage him. They'd have to have just insane armament haki, and maybe no one in the government has ever gotten to that level, and that's why they were not able to defeat him there. Or, well, they defeated him, but they weren't able to kill him. But then I also, you know, guys, you're going to get it. Every time I talk about Kaido, you're going to hear this. There's the theory that maybe he is a poneglyph, and that is why he does not take damage. That is why they cannot just drown him, you know, that because if he just had super intense armament haki, then why not just drown him? That would take care of the problem easily. But no, you know, he can't drown based on that, so could maybe be a poneglyph, and that's why he's indestructible. And the last piece of information, and in my opinion, the most important thing that we have from either of these guys, which is pretty crazy since I was just talking about how Kaido is potentially indestructible, the narrator came out and said that not just is he the strongest creature among all living things, and keep in mind humans are creatures, some people seem to think that humans are not creatures, he is the strongest creature among all living things, as well as there are people who say, just people in general say, that if it is Kaido 1v1, he will always win. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, if that's the case, then how could he not be the strongest? In my opinion, the only person who could potentially be stronger than him with that kind of logic is Dragon, just because maybe no one's ever really seen the guy fight. I mean, he's kind of a rogue. For all we know, he's never really using his full power, and no one actually knows his abilities, so it's hard to say whether or not Dragon would actually be more powerful than really anyone in the series, except like fodder characters. I mean, he can obviously beat them. Of course, he single-handedly destroyed Smoker at Logtown, but what is that? Like, that doesn't really give us that much information. But so yeah, if it wasn't clear based on what I was just saying, I am going to give this to Kaido. I think that he's probably the strongest character in the series, again, with, like I said, with the only exception possibly being Dragon, but I don't think that's the case. If anything, it would probably go Kaido, Dragon, Shanks, or Kaido, Shanks, Dragon. I think those are probably the three strongest characters in the series, with the exception of like Im-sama. I don't know what that thing is. I don't know if it has any combat ability or if it's just like a magical creature. I don't know. Although, you know, if that is the case, then Kaido should still be stronger, right? Because boom, creature, yeah. I don't know. I don't even factor that character into the story because we know absolutely nothing about that person. There's a giant straw hat, and it's like, okay, like what's even going on here? So yeah, I think Kaido does take it here based on what we've seen. A lot of people also like to be like, the entire war was stopped just because Shanks showed up. He could have easily soloed everyone on the Marineford side, and that just, it is so far from the truth. I mean, seriously, if any Yonko and their crew would have shown up, that war would have been on halt. Like, it has nothing to do with just the fact that Shanks. If Kaido and his crew showed up there, the war would have been over. I mean, they could barely, like, they absolutely barely won that war against Whitebeard's crew. It was like dead even pretty much the entire time. And let's be real, okay? I'm gonna get some hate for this one, but if Ace didn't commit suicide, there's a really good chance that they actually could have won that war. So it was just neck and neck the entire time, and then another Yonko crew, the entire crew shows up. If they could barely handle one, it was basically a tie just right there. How the hell could they handle even just another pirate crew? Not to mention a Yonko crew. Like, it just, It makes no sense to me. I think it's completely absurd. If Kaido was to show up there, if Big Mom was to show up there, the war would have been over. They would have just been able to take everyone hostage and do the same thing Shanks did, which would say, this war is over. So, yeah, that is just such an irrelevant piece of information, honestly. But yeah, hopefully I don't get too much hate for this. Guys, don't get me wrong, I like Shanks so much. He's actually my second favorite character in the entire series, and I think he's probably the second or third strongest character. So it's not like I'm that far off if you think he is the strongest. But I just gotta give it to Kaido. I mean, him being considered the strongest creature among all living things and being able to 1v1 anyone, it's too much for me. If you enjoyed this video, remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Remember to leave me a comment letting me know what you thought about this video, if you enjoyed it, if you thought that Kaido is stronger, Shanks is stronger. Let me know. Give me your argument for it. Maybe, you know, maybe you'll change my mind. Maybe there's a lot of evidence saying that Shanks really is the strongest character. If you have not joined my Discord already, I am begging you, get in there, check the description, hit the link to my Discord. Come check it out. There is so much talk going on about One Piece and different shows as well, but mainly One Piece. A lot of activity in the verse discussion talking about different battles between different characters, who would win. It gets heated, I'm telling you guys. A lot of the time people will be typing to each other saying, I think this character's gonna win. No, I think this character would win. And then it gets so crazy, they're like, let's just go into voice chat. And they go at it in the voice chat, and it's fantastic. Sometimes I'll see this going on, I'll join in there, and I'll put in my 2 cents, and it can get really fun and crazy sometimes. With that all being said, I hope you guys have an excellent rest of your day, and I will talk to you soon.